Okay, sorry for the delay. Technical difficulties. We probably should have put a break between the two panels. You're moderating this, right?
Sure.
Yeah. We have a wonderful panel of folks from Cyan, and Katie will take it away.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Hi, everybody. Remember me? So welcome to Tales from the Devs. So I have a bunch of devs in front of you. They're all from Cyan Worlds. Thanks, everybody, for coming out from taking this time off work. I know you're all very busy, and they actually are extremely busy right now. So rather than me introducing each of you, because I know you in very special ways, but I'd like each of you to introduce yourself and, yeah, that sounds weird, sorry. So I'd like, when you introduce yourself, I'd like for you to talk a bit about how you first came to Cyan and what you were doing, and if you left and came back, how that happened and what you're doing now, because I know a lot of you have sort of a complicated, interesting history with the company. So we'll start with Ryan.
Well, I first came to Cyan as a wee young child when my older brothers were creating these games called The Manhole and Cosmo and all that stuff. So I'm the youngest brother. I've been around since the beginning, basically off and on. I left after Riven and spent a year with Robin doing some stuff. And then I left after, man, I don't even know, 2008-ish.
You came back for Uru.
I was back for Uru and left 2008 for about 11 years and just came back a couple weeks ago doing kind of back. I'm half in back, doing some writing and design work for the games and hopefully some other stuff as well.
Cool. Eric?
See if this one works. Hello? Okay. I'm Eric. I've been with Cyan on and off since 2000. Actually got a call from Ryan Miller when I got the job. He was the guy who called me. I think I hold the record for a number of times left the company and come back. I think it's up to about 7 now.
Are you serious?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'll write them all down sometime. It'll be great. I worked on Uru and all the projects since then. I was art director for Abduction, and my job title is currently creative director for the studio. So
Awesome.
worked on some other games outside the company, and now I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Hannah?
I think, does my mic work or do I have to use the headphone? Sorry, Karl. So my name's Hannah, and I'm a programmer. I'm the development director here at Cyan now, but started in 2012 as an intern while I was in college, and just did QA, and like some other people on this panel, we all just started in QA and kind of went through the ranks, I guess, and left college after graduating and became a programmer at Cyan, and then I left with Eric to go to Tekla and work for Jonathan Blow and some stuff, and now we're back. Yeah, yay.
Hello, I'm Karl. Started in 2003, tail end of 2003 in Uru doing QA. I haven't left, really. But yeah, now I'm a senior engineer, and yeah, worked on basically everything from Uru to now I'll be working on Firmament. So.
I'm Brandon. I started in 2015 in QA on Abduction, and then kind of went up to programming after about a year and a half or so. Now I'm programming Abduction and Firmament. So.
Awesome.
And I've never left.
If this works. Am I on? Okay.
You're on.
I'm Jason Calvert. I started at Cyan in 2003. Tail end of Uru stuff. Was there for a couple of years, part of the big exodus of 2008. I was away for about a year and a half, and then I've been back ever since. So every project since, Abduction, all that. So.
I was at Cyan back in 1991. Worked on a little game called Myst. I was the only artist that was living in Spokane at the time who knew 3D. So I was kind of like a steal for Cyan at that time, and I didn't know what I was doing, that's for sure. And I left after Myst was completed and went on to work on a bunch of other games, and now I'm back as a developer, and Cyan's publishing what we're doing. Is that?
So I think what you can take away from this is Cyan, if nothing else, they're extremely loyal. They recognize and keep good talent when they find it and see it, even if it isn't a brother or other family member. But I love that about Cyan. I mean, even myself, who was gone for a number of years and invited back, like it's just fantastic that when they can, they hire back the people that they love. And anyway, it's good that you guys are all here today. So the first question is for you, Jason. Since you've been there for quite a while, for 16 years, how do you feel Cyan has evolved with the game landscape changing and growing as it has since you've started working there?
Well, I'm not sure that's a great question for me. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a great person to answer that question.
Who do you think should answer that?
I mean, that's probably, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Eric?
Why me?
No one wants to answer any questions.
Go for it.
How has the company itself changed?
The
Sure,
games.
yeah, but I mean, even the stuff that you're working on, and
Boy.
how do your games change and
I
evolve?
mean, it's easy to answer it from sort of the engine standpoint, the technological standpoint, which is where for most of us here, except for maybe Ryan, in terms of like the day-to-day job, we live in whatever engine we're working in. That's home for a number of years. And when I first started, and I think when Jason first started, we were using a custom homebrew engine that was being written in-house by a team of talented programmers, and that was great, but it had tons of drawbacks. At the time,
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say at the time it was revolutionary, but as the years went on, especially the early 2000s,
Yeah.
really quickly it became outdated and it was sort of falling behind in terms of features and things like that. So an easy way to answer that question is like over the years, I think Cyan has really come to embrace sort of more of cutting edge technology and third-party engines, and has learned that that's a totally valid way to develop, and that has drawbacks as well.
That's true, though, from a technology standpoint. Cyan's always wanted to go from a company that made worlds to a company that now can almost make worlds, essentially,
Right,
with technology-wise. So.
right.
Yep.
Actually, I had this for you, Eric, but anybody can answer, and guys, jump in if you have anything to contribute to any of the questions. How do you feel the Cyan community, who are here, some of whom today, how do you feel the Cyan community has contributed to the success of Cyan Games and as a company?
I mean,
Other than buying them and
obviously
playing
buying
them,
them.
yes. Yeah.
And now us asking for them to pre-purchase the games. 'cause,
Correct.
yeah.
Yes. Aside from that.
You buy them.
No, I mean, the fact that you guys are having a get-together specifically around the games that Cyan makes is pretty crazy, right?
After 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious how Chuck feels about the fact that there's a convention called Mysterium named after a video game he worked on in the early 90s.
Wow. Well, it's kind of like, I guess, when I talk to all of you all the mythology that's come out of that one game. When we were making it, it was a game, and I was more worried about, is this render going to take 5 hours or 24 hours just for one shot of Myst? So I mean, that was my big concern when we were making it, and had no idea at all that it would grow to what it is today. And you're just a small fraction of the fans out there that play the game and follow along through this mythology. So I mean, for me, it's exciting to see it. And please excuse my ignorance on all that mythology. I mean, I've worked on a bunch of other games since then, but I'm really happy that we were able to leave that kind of a legacy behind, and that game was able to seed all these other games that built on, to this huge community, which I find amazing. I mean, I'm happy you guys invited me to this. I feel humbled by it, having been just a small part of this whole picture.
Your face is on the rug.
It's a mosaic on the floor. It's not a
Your
rug.
face is, oh, well.
Actually, I think this is a great time to chime in. So in QA, we had one tester, and every now and then we'll, slip jokes to the devs. And there was a wrestler named Mick Foley, and there was a bug called Why is Mick Foley in Kavir?
That's great. That's pretty great.
I've heard that actually before. Someone told me that, yeah.
That's awesome.
From somebody else that was on the dev team.
So Ryan, this is for you. What is one interesting puzzle or story plot point that never made it into a game? You can choose more than one. I know you've got probably a couple, but
Oh my gosh.
do you have some favorites or standouts?
I mean, so much of Uru. I've
Yeah,
just
yeah.
come back and been looking through some of the old design docs and being sad again. There were so many. I mean, that thing was ready to roll, and it's still a bummer that it didn't get to ever roll out like we had intended. So, story plots, characters, ages, puzzles, game. I mean, just it goes on and on. So, there's a million from that era that, you know, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, so many pieces of that. So I don't know if there'd be one that would be that interesting even, or if I even remember them. I'm just now kind of refreshing my memory.
What about Myst or Ribbon?
Myst, I mean, I was in high school, so I would go up in the summers and write these journals, and this classic rant, like, hey, you want to write these things? I'm like, yeah, I want to be a writer someday. What do I write them on? I don't know, just like there's this rock and ship and write a history. All right, cool.
Right on.
So go with Emmett. I mean, I loved football. Emmett Smith was a running back for the Cowboys. I'm like, Emmett, that's a good name. Catherine, I'm like, I think I'm gonna marry a girl starts with a C one day, so I'll name this girl Catherine. And
Does Heidi know
That didn't work out.
no, it didn't work out, fortunately. So yeah, it was. I mean, that was crazy. I don't even know what I was doing. None of us did.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I was 18. I had no clue.
And yet, look how awesome.
And yet here it is,
Yeah.
which, answering your earlier question, I mean, it does speak to the story of that you have all contributed to and made better, because people don't just gather for a game. They gather for story. Like story, you know, it moves us, and it gives us a reason to gather and something in common. So the way that this story has evolved and grown, in part because of you and in part because of this history, is really cool to see. And I'm a story person anyway, so I get in on that kind of stuff, and that gets me going. But it's really cool how this thing has just become life somehow, real somehow, you know. It's really cool.
And that kind of goes both ways too. The support that we get from you guys, kind of back to your previous question, like things get, we're down on the muck a lot of times, working, you know, hard puzzles and late nights sometimes, and knowing that people care about what we do really makes us want to do the best job we can. So anyway.
How often does pizza show up at the door, or donuts, or?
It's,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wherever Dan Floyd is, I've had a lot of cookies.
Yeah.
So,
I think he'll be here. Is Dan here now?
yes,
Oh, there's Dan.
Hi, Dan.
they are delicious.
What's
Right
up?
on. So
Did you-
Dan
did
is
you bring
providing
cookies?
dessert for everyone tomorrow.
Thank you for those
Are there
cookies,
more?
Dan.
So Brandon, what's your favorite part of being on the team and helping to be part of the process to create these games and these worlds?
Honestly, so because I'm kind of the newbie, compared to noob compared to everyone, it's crazy that they'll have discussions about the history of Myst, and I know nothing. I remember playing Myst in I was 14, 15 years old when I was playing it. Really enjoyed it, and then got away from it and never got back in until I got hired, and then I played a little bit of Uru, and I need to go back and play all the others. But it's really cool. I've done a couple conventions and gone to PAX, and to have fans come up and tell me the history of everything, and I'm like, that's awesome. I wish I knew it more. Sorry.
Yeah, that's cool. Again, it leads back to story, right? That it's all tied together with these threads that are so compelling for people. Yeah. All right. This is for you.
Oh.
What was your fondest memory? I know what you're going to say. What was your fondest memory of working on the Myst franchise? Well, Myst, I guess.
For Myst.
Sure.
Fondest memory.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's a good one. Well, there's a lot of good memories, and I guess I have a collection of fond memories, which were when I would hit the render button and then come back a day and a half later and look at the image that rendered, I think. I know that sounds really kind of mundane, but it really took us hours, if not sometimes days, to render each individual image in Myst. And there was a couple images that were 36 hours, and these images don't even compare to what Unreal Engine does in real time now. And, to think that, the time I spent between pressing that button, hit render, and then taking my kids out, on a hike and, going out doing something with the dog,
Walking
it's
the
just
dog.
like, but it was like I had the most exciting and laziest job in the universe, it's like,
Yeah.
I would build out half of a level and then just go around and then I would give it to Rand and then Rand would hand it back to me and then let me render it. He would set the cameras up and then hand it back to me and then I would hit render. It's never that fast. It's like render, okay, go get an education someplace and then hit render again. So I have to say it was just that process of actually being able, and I would have another computer and I would work on other models, of course, during the period of time and then you'd go back and forth. But it was also just a camaraderie we had. We all worked out of our own house.
Yeah.
Rand had his double wide, and he had an extra room put on it, and that's sort of where we would meet for a while at his room. And driving out to the middle of nowhere next to a paintball field, where he lived out here someplace in Spokane. I don't even remember where it's at anymore.
It's up in Chatteroy, I think.
Yeah, and then Chris Brandkamp took over that duty when he built a garage with a second story.
Right.
I think the Myst headquarters became the second story of the garage. And that was fun to go there. And then when Robin and Rand would come to the house and they would have their little optical drive that was able to handle a whopping 20 megabytes, I think. And I would hand off my level of Myst to them, and then they would take it and then put their cameras in and bring it back, But it just was a whole collection of things. It was something that was really brand new, and we really, at the time, kind of knew what we were doing, but a lot of it was still kind of figuring it all out. And to speak to your point earlier about what's changed, I think technology is the biggest thing. It's just that today we can iterate really fast. I don't have to wait, 2 days for a render to happen. You can sit there, put the level together, play the whole thing, and then 5 minutes later you've changed all the things you didn't see working the first time and go back and change again. That's made it a lot easier. So.
Right. Eric, same question for you, but with Uru. What's some of your fondest memories working on Uru?
Fondest memories on Uru. Wow.
That 1940.
Just how the team was and how.
Yeah, we did it. We had a lot
What
of
was that
good
game we played?
multiplayer games.
That's definitely the fun.
Um,
Not working.
no, it was
Not working, right?
honestly, my fondest memories are the group of people that were
Yeah.
there at the time. So anybody who's been up to the Cyan campus, and if not, most of you here will be there tomorrow, I assume. If you've been up there before, you've seen probably the Myst building, the one that's the iconic, broken out archway, and that's where we're working out of now. But across the parking lot is a big L-shaped metal building, and most of you probably know this, but that building was built specifically for the work we were doing at the time on Uru, because we were going to be hundreds and hundreds of people in order to do what we were proposing.
To do the live service.
And so we had, we never got as big as we intended to, but for a while there we were pretty big, and there was some of the most talented people I've ever worked with. I have fond memories of working directly with Stefan Martinier, who did the concept art, and world-class artists that just to remember now being able to just stroll into his office and have a casual conversation about a movie and have him do a little sketch on the back of a piece of paper and then go back to my office and model it. I took it for granted at the time because I was just a dumb, production artist kid. When I started at Cyan, I was 24, and so I look back now and I was like, I didn't appreciate it for what it was. But I can look back fondly now and go like, that group of people, I'll never see a collection like that again. And I'm still friends with most of them, which is the really valuable part.
Yeah, those were magical days. How many of you came out in 2003 to Spokane, to Mysterium then, and got the tour of that building and saw Uru being developed? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so you know exactly what Eric's talking about, and you got to meet a lot of those. I remember the day of Mysterium that we went to Cyan, though. I I remember there was a group of guys just off to the side, scientists, who were just amazed. I think you said to me a couple of times, you were amazed that people would come all this way. Like we had people from Europe and Africa and Australia, hi Riam, that would come all this way for a game. And you said, I feel like these folks think we're rock stars, but we're not rock stars. We're just making a video game. And I said,
Little did I know I was
Right.
a rock star.
right? You guys are rock stars. But as you can all see, I mean, look at how many people are here 20 years
I actually
later.
love the fact that I only saw a few hands go up,
Yeah,
because my
it's really
assumption
cool.
was that everybody was going to be like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
I've been here the
right?
whole time. Because I guess it's encouraging to know that like lots of people have sort of
You
jumped
got
on
fresh
jumped
blood.
on the bandwagon in the years
Yeah.
since then, and that's really, really cool.
Well, we have people here who I've talked to who played with their parents, whose parents have been to Mysterium past and are coming here themselves for who are here for the first time at a Mysterium ever. Yeah,
That's
there you go.
awesome.
Whoa.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
So, yeah, there's the impact you guys have had.
Very cool.
Yeah. So Karl.
Oh, no.
What are you? Hi, Karl.
Hi. Oh, hi. How's it
So
talking to this?
Karl has my favorite voice of anyone in the world, just so you guys know. Not
Hello.
I want to know what you're most excited about when you look to the future of Cyan.
Oh, what am I most excited about? I'm actually really excited about VR development. At first, when we were talking about abduction, that VR was just kind of a new thing. You know, we had the Oculus DK1, maybe, because it was just kickstarted. And now, like, if you look at the horizon, you see that as the future, and there's so much room to grow. There's a lot of design principles that haven't been like set in stone, so there's a lot of wiggle room or implementation that you can mess around with. But the fact that we got in at the ground floor and we have plenty of room to grow, and especially with the new title, that's exciting, really exciting.
So can you talk a little bit about how the decision was made? I know abduction was first made for PC, and then you brought it into VR. And so you flipped that dev process for Firmament. Can you talk about how that kind of...
That was because going the other way is a mistake. So if you make a 2D game and or we call it flat screen internally, if you start there, you're making compromises to make a VR build, where there are lots of things to consider, like comfort, just spatially how that looks, and performance. Performance is huge. When you start like VR first, I think that's the internal mantra, is you can work on those things like performance and how you interact with this in VR, and then the 2D side of it is actually pretty easy to implement. Well, pretty easy. You can implement it without a ton of compromise. For instance, we were showing this at GDC. We were showing Firmament, just like a really early preview, and before we had left, we did not have any flat screen representation of the game. And by the time we got back from GDC,
Right.
Jason and Brandon had it working, and so that meant that no version of this had to suffer. And I think that's just a very important thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Hannah, same question. This was originally going to be for Ryan W., but he's busy. So you had to head back to Cyan, but same question about what you're most excited about the future, but this time for Cyan Ventures.
Oh man.
Being careful, of course,
Well,
what you actually
Trying to think about what I
reveal.
can or
Right.
can't talk about right,
Right,
now with
right.
regards to that. We have some exciting projects we're working on with Cyan Ventures. Hopefully more information will be shared.
I'm actually pretty fired up about the
Yeah.
thing we can talk about. We recently
Yeah.
started working with a cool developer, and they're doing some cool stuff that
Ryan
we
said their
can't
name
talk
during the
about.
last panel.
Oh.
What did he tell
Oh.
you? What
He's-
did he tell you?
It's not me. I'm
On
in
the
on
panel.
those meetings, dude. But he said the
I wanna know
N-
what we're
he
allowed
said
to-
the N name. He did. He said the name
He said
of
the
the
N word.
I didn't say that. I said the name.
Wow.
No,
Wow,
he said the
Ryan.
He said the name of the
Mysterio.
company
Fired.
in the last panel.
But
Yeah.
yes, but he
Oh,
didn't
okay.
say what or who
Okay.
or
Okay,
where.
okay.
So, but you heard
Yeah.
you heard the name Numinous.
He-
Okay.
right?
So anybody
Okay.
who's familiar with That Dragon Cancer, the developers of That Dragon Cancer, are doing a cool project, and
And
It's-
Cyan's part of it.
it's pretty exciting.
Yep.
So
Yep. So that's cool.
Yeah. Beside that, we especially like with working on Zed with Chuck and stuff, and that was quite the like emotional trip playing that game. I think we're just focusing on like more of that sort of experience, ones that like affect people emotionally and kind of take you through like another, not necessarily like a Myst game, but just like something really experimental and interesting and engaging. So yeah, I wish I could say more about this extra project, but
no, but I mean, being able to be choosy about what
Yeah.
other people we work with and what kind of projects we do. I think there's, the kind of games that Chuck makes and the kind of games that Cyan makes and the kind of games that Numinous makes it's tough in the current market. And I think there's strength in numbers and being able to co-pollinate,
Yeah.
help promote other games and get the support of other developers is really powerful. Hopefully
Yeah.
we can make it bigger.
Yep. So I'm looking at you, but if anybody on the panel has something they can say that they want to reveal during the panel, you're welcome to. But I'm not saying this because I know anything. I just am curious if anybody wants to let slip anything that they're working on.
Who's she looking at? You looking at me? At me?
Yes, at you, but I don't know
Do you know
if
something?
maybe. I'm not saying anything. I'm curious, but you don't have to. We can move on.
Is there anything we can?
What's going on, Ryan?
Yeah, really. Why don't you hint at what you're
No,
referring
I'm
to?
not. No. All right. Maybe we'll save stuff for. I know Rand
No,
has
no, go
stuff
ahead,
that he wants to tell
hint,
you about.
hint.
No. All right. So, I'm not sure. I want a hands up of who has questions, because if you guys have questions, I don't want to take up too much more time so that you guys have time to answer all the questions. But yeah, like 8 or 9 at least, and those will lead to more and more, I'm sure. So, what I'd like is for each of you to kind of just to summarize something that you'd love to tell the community about Cyan or your job or a piece that you've worked on that you wish people knew that you haven't had a chance to tell anybody yet, or that people don't understand. How do I put this? Like, you guys don't see what we do day to day, right? And it's all really easy to kind of talk in generalities, or I have this really great memory of this time, but there's a lot of ups and downs, and it's a lot of hard work, and sometimes there's a lot of late nights or layoffs and stuff. But is there anything that you want to kind of convey to these guys here, something you've never been able to share before or wish they knew more about? These are easy questions, guys.
Yeah, softball. I don't know. I probably don't want the microphone. But kind of going back to something that Jason had mentioned, if it weren't for this community, obviously we wouldn't be sitting here. But beyond that, it would be very difficult for when you have to do something, at a cost to, your time, your life, and put it into the game. And it's awesome to have such a community that it's worth it. I don't have much more than that. Also, they send you cookies and pizza. That's pretty great. And they invite you up to a panel where you can yammer. So it's pretty great.
You're pretty forgiving also. Yeah. Which is really nice, because that means we can make mistakes and we can risk, and we know that we won't lose the fans most of the time.
Oh.
All of them. So it is. You know, you said it's hard, but it really is. It's a hard. Geez, we don't need to bring out the violins, but it's a hard job, and there are, you know, in the history of Cyan, there's been so many, and we've just kind of experienced a couple, to be honest, the last couple weeks since I've been back. These highs, like, oh my God, this thing is gonna, wah wah, and we've had. I mean, Uru was a massive one of those. We were so jacked, so excited, and it just. I remember that meeting.
That feeling in slow motion over months.
That meeting I'll never forget. I mean, we were zombies, that place. We walked out of there just like, what just happened? This is the worst thing ever. So, but all of that, you know, that's just life. It's hard to do all this stuff, and I think we probably think of you more than you think we do, or maybe you think we think of you all the time. I don't know where you think. But we do think of you, and we think of how the fans will respond, and try not to think of how you respond too much, because then, you know, we can't push you and offend you and make you mad and stoke emotion. But we do think of you a lot, and then, and like I said in the beginning, it's that ability to fail. So we can try things. We've definitely failed in the past, and we know that, man, there's still this support. There's this tribe we can kind of fall back on, which means a ton to any company.
This is one of the kinder communities, I think, out there. Which
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
yeah.
I have firsthand experience with at least 20 other communities.
Cyan, for the life of its history, has tried to be a kind company to the employees and to the culture is one of like forgiveness and kindness and all that. And it's really nice to have a community that seems to lock onto that and give us the same leeway.
Mm-hmm.
It's really.
And the community, you guys are nurturing of each other too, and you're welcoming to new people, and and respectful of each other, and yeah, it's huge. I mean, I think that's because of the kind of games and the kind of company that this is. Yeah. All right, so we're going to take questions, unless anyone else has something they want to say.
Honestly, we have a really fun work environment too. I don't know that anyone sees everything, but.
Right.
Like, we're genuinely good friends, and we genuinely get along, and we genuinely try and lift each other up and bounce ideas off of each other, and it's really fun. Some of us will start trying some things and sometimes see, like, hey, maybe we could do this a different way, and it's really fun because we end up lifting each other up, even in different departments. There's no departmental splits. We all work really well together, so it's a really cool environment.
Yeah, I love when I'm there and I say, oh, hey, I haven't met you before. What do you do? And there's this moment of confusion, like, oh, do I have to name one thing? Because so many of you do 3 or 4 different things on any given day. Like, no 2 days are alike. So, yeah, you're all very talented people, and we're all glad you're here. Okay.
Speaking of, I have one fun story that I just remembered about Eric in particular.
I gotta go.
Speaking of like fun in the office, I remember it was like 3 days before we were submitting some kind of like demo or something for abduction somewhere, and
Did I break the game? What did I do?
It was close.
Okay,
not,
good.
I mean, not quite, but I remember I hadn't added sounds for this one thing yet in Soria. And I go in to add the sounds, and suddenly there are fart sounds, like everywhere.
Nice.
And I'm like, what the heck happened?
Specifically, it was the glitching holograms.
Yeah,
in
the
Soria.
holograms. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 100% Eric. And
Well,
I was glad I caught it because he didn't even tell me. I was about to go to the demo.
Maybe I was hoping it was going to make it into the demo.
Oh God.
Nice. Nice. That's amazing. That's awesome.
So we have fun. That's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There's that one thing with Rand, a bet I had with Rand once.
Which one?
Everybody familiar with the Selenitic gauge?
Oh,
Okay, you know the little rail you ride around in, little car?
Everybody knows. That was all him.
Good, because that was not the first choice. There was an entire level that was designed originally by Rand that was a series of platforms. You walked up and down these stairs, and some of you people I'm sure have heard this already. Has anybody not heard this story? Oh, good.
Oh, good.
So this will be new to some of you. There's the original idea that behind the level was these the hubs with the sounds. You listen to each of the sounds and it determines which way you go. Originally, it was supposed to be a series of walkways and platforms that you use to walk to each of the hubs. And then you stop at the hub, you press a button, and you hear a sound, and you know which way to go off that hub. Well, Rand gave me a map that he had drawn of it that was just so convoluted. It was just like things going under and over everything else like that. And I looked at it and I said, okay, I can get this to you maybe 2.5 weeks. And he says, I'll make a bet with you, you won't get it done in a month. And I said, okay. So I went through and went home and I sat down and I knocked it out in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks actually. And so I won my $200 bet. But what we discovered after I built and prototyped it all out was that it would have taken over 2.5 years to render every single shot. If we had placed a camera at every node that it had to be placed at in order to continue walking through the slideshow that was Myst, it would have killed us. And we could have bought like 5 or 6 new computers and still would never have been able to make the game finished on time. So we got rid of that. And I saw something in a game at the time called the Journeyman Project. Anybody ever hear of that?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Now, it played like crap on any computer if you've ever played it. But it was a wonderful looking game and it was a really cool story. And there was this one little shot in the game. I remember looking through a little window. I'm in a mine cart and it's zooming around through this little tunnel. And the window itself was like maybe this big, on the screen. But it's like, I'm in a cart. I'm riding through something in 3D. And I said, I wonder if I could do something like that with rails. And I came up with this other idea about putting it in a little ship. And you look through a little window and you go from rail to each of the hubs and then rotate the ship to the direction of the sound. And so that's where that whole thing originated. So I was $200 richer and then
we
came
all
up
got
with
the
a whole
Selenenic
different
puzzle.
idea that you guys have no idea what the original one looked like. So
There's a screenshot of it out there somewhere.
that's the only shot that exists of that too. I wish I knew where it's long gone in digital history. So
That's
that's it.
awesome. Cool. Hi, Marty.
Really quick story about Ryan.
Yes, please
Yes.
do.
Yes.
He changed your
Ryan
diaper
knows
once.
this.
Marty, man. How's it been?
So in summer of '93, a friend of mine said, "Hey, my son would like to see your studio." And he was an 18-year-old kid named Josh Staub. He came to Chicago, saw my studio, and he says, "Oh, my friends make computer games." And I'm like, "Well, that's cute." So he says, "Well, I got a beta version of their new game. I'll bring it over to your house." So he did. And I had a CD-ROM in my house. And he put it in. Of course, he needed help. I think he had to call Rand to get a HyperCard to play color on my computer. And I was immediately mesmerized. And the game started, and I was hooked. And I'm like, I'm changing careers. I'm going to go into games. I
Right on.
I said, "Josh, can I buy stock in your friend's company?" He goes, "No, I don't think so." But I started playing the game, and very quickly I found these journals. And of course, I told Josh, "Don't tell me anything. Like I want to figure this out, and I'm figuring things out. And I'm already taking notes." And now I open this journal and I start reading every word in the journal because I'm sure that there's all sorts of important stuff. It
All
was
the
so well
clues.
written and it had so much backstory, and I'm sure everything in there is going to help me do something. And finally Josh puts his hand on my arm and he's like, "Yeah, these journals are really not very important. Just..." So
Josh
I'm
did
sorry,
that to
Ryan.
me.
That was your
My
friend
best
Josh.
man.
So, does anyone not know who that was? That's Marty that you waved to this morning. Okay, cool. Thank you, Marty. All right, does anyone have a question for the panel? I think it's up to. Yay.
Hi, thank you all for being here. I have a couple of quick questions. One is, as you've increasingly shifted towards using off-the-shelf technologies and third-party products like Unreal, I'm curious, are there times when you felt like you're wrestling against them and you need to implement
Yes.
something?
Especially, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing like stories about specific times you wanted to implement something that the engine like didn't support or resisted. And I'm also just curious to hear about like the experience of working on games as an engineer. Like I'm speaking as a software engineer, and I want to get more into making games, and I'm trying to figure out like, is engineering on a game project, does it feel like you're making a game, or does it feel like you're like implementing something very low level, and like if you want to have that experience of like creating, do you need to be a designer or an artist or a producer, and not like the engineer?
That's
the
a great
henchman?
question.
It's a really good
Wow,
question.
I feel like I'll let the other guys probably talk about some of the explicit things that they ran into using Unreal Engine, but Eric and I had a really interesting time at Tekla working with Jonathan Blow, because while we were there for a year and a half, together, it was like a year and a half.
Year and a half, and then I did 3 years on The Witness.
Right.
But it's a very different philosophy.
Yeah.
Very different philosophy.
So over there, they like make everything from scratch. Everything. Like John would probably balk at using Unreal Engine or Unity or anything like that, because he firmly believes in like, you need to know everything inside out. You got to build your own house from the ground up. Here at Cyan, we don't necessarily have the resources to take the time to do that. So we use, like you said, off-the-shelf technology, and to me personally, I feel like that enables me to be a little more creative with the programming I do, because I'm spending less time iterating on like really obscure engine features and more time iterating on like prototyping gameplay or implementing sounds or whatnot. I can see like both sides of it, because I did learn a ton being at Tekla and making everything from the ground up, but I felt like while I was there, I wasn't working on the things like I was super passionate about, which is like making the actual game and not like supporting the engine.
I think that philosophy has a place. I understand it. I empathize with it. But from where we're sitting, I'd rather ship more games quicker than spend 8 years on a single title, which is easy to do. But as far as the off-the-shelf stuff, like it revolutionized my job. At the beginning of Abduction, I was purely 3D guy with a little bit of technical know-how just from working with programmers at Cyan. Really, learning sort of the language. But using Unreal has allowed me to implement my own systems for things, actually do my own programming. It's changed everything. And to go the other direction, these guys all the time will implement stuff with temporary artwork that, it'll get swapped out later, but it's fully representative of the interactivity and the functionality. So to the second part of your question, just if your background is in engineering, don't be afraid of working in a game engine. And it really does, it feels nice when you see that progress and you're like, I made that by myself. And I used a third-party engine, but who cares? It's
I'll chime in real quick. So when you're working with, like, say, Unity or Unreal, the difference there, Unity is, at least the last time I was using it, is much higher level in terms of what you'll be, what you'll have access to. And so for a lot of it, and this goes to maybe like picking your off-the-shelf products, right? Like it does a lot for you. Unity does, and it's easy to get up and running in a lot of ways. But I found that we were constantly working around stuff, and that's because we didn't have access to the source. When we switched to Unreal, that went away. We were able to fix whatever we saw was an issue. So if you're comfortable being low level in the engine, Unreal is a great choice. Obviously, we've picked that as our tool, our home, as Eric might say. But there's, really, it's kind of what you're comfortable with, and when you pick something off the shelf like this, like Unreal, like Unity, you can focus in on gameplay. You can, to Hannah's point, get creative. There's almost this artistic side that comes out with your engineering skills, like maybe how something moves, or maybe it's how you're going to have interaction happen, and maybe this brings out like a designer in you. So while in other studios, you could be like the person who writes or helps in the rendering team, and you're really limited to that one thing. These engines give you kind of the gamut. Like you can touch any system and mold it to your will.
I'm actually fairly constantly in the engine. Well, I think my new title is actually implementer of features Unreal Engine doesn't support. And
it's true.
But it's nice at the same time that we're not having to go take months and months and months to implement systems. We can just build on top of what's already there. So, I mean, for example, when we started in abduction, we needed a way to basically create flows for river systems. And it was a nightmare trying to do it without any kind of tool. So we just built a tool in Unreal Engine. They had a paint tool, so we just piggybacked on it and built it. And to your question of does it feel like we're making games, it really does. Even when you're in the guts of the engine, there's something about being able to make a tool where I am not capable of making art, but I'm capable of making tools that enable artists to make better art, essentially. So it always feels like we're constantly keeping that ball rolling, and everybody's contributing in different ways. So.
And the best part is when we get together with other devs who know the engine even, they're familiar with the engine, and they look at what we're doing. Like that, the tool he's mentioning, the flow painting tool, we showed it to other devs who were very, very active, and even the people who make the software, Epic Games, were like, oh my God, you guys, like, I want this in the engine. We should add this. What was it? Yeah, we actually have had a few things make it back into the main branch. Like,
we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but technically Unreal Engine isn't like open source. You can have access to everything, but you can't actually share it on the internet. It's very interesting. Yeah.
But in terms of like specific tools, some of the things we've done have actually made it back into the main branch, and now everybody has it. So, and that's, you know, Jason and Karl, and just coming up with cool solutions, and then somebody at the company goes, wow, that's really cool. We want everybody to have that. So.
And we've had a few times where we've had some bigger features that would be like, it'd be really cool to do a pull request, but because we're so busy all the time, it's a hard thing to do. Like, I got to clean this up now so it's ready for the public consumption. And I mean, it might be fine, it might be in good shape, but it might be in kind of development shape, essentially.
I think Jason's so tired of me every week going like, dude, make
I
a pull
know.
request. Like, this is awesome.
It's a
He's
great
like, oh,
idea.
I will.
In theory. But yeah, no, we've added actually a lot of features to the engine that have fit our particular needs, because we're not making a first-person shooter. We never have. So
Yet.
it's
Permanent, baby.
That was the name
Well,
of
you
us
made
right there.
you made Real Myst with a gun. Real Myst had a gun. Did anyone find that one? Hands up. Really? Who's played Real Myst holding a gun? One.
Feel like
Really?
that's a different
Oh,
question.
you guys haven't lived. No, I meant you guys, everything I said. Holding a gun in the game, I mean, not. Does that change anyone's answer? Oh man, all the hands go down. Yeah.
actually, speaking of guns, whenever someone new comes into Real Myst, we use the old art assets and brought them up, but every time someone comes to the tower at Myst Island and looks at the Real Myst tower, who's brand new, like, why is there a cannon pointed out of the tower door? And it's because there was an April Fool's joke like 20 years ago where there was, anyway, it's pretty funny. So there's a gun pointed out of the tower door that will never be turned on, but exists in the data. And it's like, what is this? Anyway, it's kind of funny.
Lots of questions.
Thank you. I was kind of inspired by her question and have one similar to limitations in technology, and wanted to ask, especially as you all are veterans in tech and in games, as Myst was born during an era of technological limitation and evolution, of course, a lot of the features of the game I know were born because of those limitations, you know, like creating within confines, you know, creating within borders, like, you know, QuickTime being only that size, so, you know, the linking book, you know. Do you find that with modern engines and technology, kind of like having the gamut that you can run, having so many tools, so much freedom, it's kind of the agony of choice and it kind of burdens your creation, or do you feel like a lot of freedom with it and it's actually a plus for you?
I can answer that real quick because I work with those limitations with Myst, and I compare that a lot of times what we can do today. And even to kind of piggyback on your question, as an artist working in these engines, I can prototype out something. I can get into something just enough to make it vaguely work, you know, using the engine. I'm not an engineer, but I know enough about something called blueprints, which is what you use in Unreal in order to determine functionality for literally everything. And I can get into it and play around, run around in it full time, real time, and see if something's working or not working. And if anything, the technology has freed me up from a creative standpoint and from an artistic standpoint in ways that I could never have possibly imagined when we did Myst. And you know, the engines, and I'm an old guy, and I can figure this stuff out. You know, as I can jump right into the engine, I can write out a whole stream of blueprints that drive SkyMap games crazy, because they have to go back and clean it up or rewrite it. But at least I know what I want to make my point. So in that term, it makes iterating on whatever we're working on so much faster. I mean, I can experiment on one idea 10 times over the course of even an hour, just tweaking little things to see if it works. And to do it back in the old days, everything had to be planned so carefully, you know, because of the limitations of the software. And nowadays, that software, from at least an artistic standpoint, has allowed me to be able to develop much, much faster, and it's freed me in ways I could never have thought of.
I would agree, because I come from the same world of pre-rendered graphics, and there's not a day goes by where I miss rendering a frame. And sometimes even baking out assets is like, why do I have to wait? You know, I've got 12 CPUs in this computer. Why am I waiting for anything? But you know, it goes from you're waiting overnight for a render to now you're rendering 90 times a second, and it's all happening in real time. It's changed everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also add, like on the other side of that coin, have any of you played Braid at all?
Yeah.
So like Braid would be something probably non-trivial to do in our engine just because of the limitations between like time and physics and how all of that is like assumed to work in Unreal Engine. So in a way, like depending on the game you want to make, you know, technology today off the shelf is kind of limiting. But yeah, do you really want to spend the time to make your own engine from the ground up? Not sure. Yeah.
Now, to the other side of your question, which was about constraints and borders, I think from a design perspective, constraints and borders are actually really good most of the time.
And they're always there. I mean, they're there now.
Right.
We're talking about firmament. We have high-tech everything, and it's always like, we can't. I mean, there's budget constraints, time constraints. There's always constraints. Maybe someday there won't be, but I can't imagine it as a blue sky designer.
From a creative perspective, those constraints are freeing in a way.
Yeah,
it gives you it helps formulate your idea and your implementation and all that.
Right.
And a bit on the tool side. So you have a number of tools available to you now. The nice thing is you can only evaluate and decide from there, as long as you have the time. But you really can't make too many wrong choices, like, you know, whether it's engines that are off the shelf. There's Godot or Godot now, or however you pronounce it. You know, so there's something that we wouldn't have experience with, but you know, could be an option. But really, you want to look at just evaluating quickly and seeing what plays to the strengths or the needs of what you're doing. You don't want to kind of like languish in like, oh, but it has all these features and 80% of them will never get touched, versus, oh, I'm really comfortable with this and it seems to suit me well, let's go with this. And at this point in Unreal, you know, not only do the engineers feel like empowered to write stuff, but the artists do too. It really kind of makes everybody a designer in a way. So we've picked Unreal, and that's just helped us eliminate a lot of those like choices that that you'd otherwise have to make, you know, in terms of like, where does this team member go and what should they be working on?
We have conversations quite often between design and programming as well, and it's usually design coming up with crazy ideas, like cool ideas, pie in the sky ideas they don't even think are doable, and then coming to us and be like, can you guys do this? And it's really fascinating. One of the initial glimmers of an idea in Abduction was, what if one of the linking seeds could be anywhere? What if you link and you take a chunk of terrain with you? And we're immediately like, what if you take half of a puzzle with you or something like that? It was just like, it's interesting how those kind of things play out. And it's like, oh yeah, shoot. And anyway, it's like, well, maybe that's not doable within time constraints. And it's like, that's okay. We just move on. But
I've had, hello.
I've had the opportunity to work at a number of different organizations over the years, and goodbye. And I found that in the process of moving back and forth, I've sometimes unwittingly cross-pollinated company culture ideas from one place to another. And I'm curious for the people who have worked at Cyan and then gone elsewhere, what pieces of Cyan's company culture did other companies take and think, oh, this is awesome?
That's a fantastic
While
question.
I was away from Cyan, I worked full-time at Tekla, but I did some freelance work with Phenomena. They worked on Luna, and Robin Hunicke runs the company. She worked on Journey and stuff. And one of the things that I loved about Phenomena was that it was a very like open and transparent sort of company culture. So with Eric and I back now, we've kind of like set this kind of like bar for ourselves. Like we're going to make sure everybody's always on the same page, always knows what's going on, you know, business-wise, team-wise, project-wise, like keeping everybody in the loop is just like really awesome and empowering. So that's just one good example.
And sometimes it's not taking company culture with you necessarily, and I think I can think of a lot of specific examples where we left Cyan and we sort of took certain values or certain things we appreciated with us, and then we saw those things absent at another company and realized how crucially important certain things are. And when we came back, you know, pushed certain things up the priority list, because it's like the absence of this makes for a rougher development cycle, and so let's make sure that we as a company never lose this, and we all, you know, and it's sometimes it's I'm trying to think of a specific example, but a lot of times it's like what I was saying earlier, it's just like kindness or, you know, warmness.
Respect.
Yeah, like we're all just people. We're all going to have really crappy weeks, and sometimes that's okay. And I think it's important to remember that wherever you work, regardless of the industry. Yeah.
And there's kind of this like family feel to everything. So, and as someone who decided that they didn't want to leave, it really, like the culture at Cyan is just like, you know, like hanging out with your best friends every day. But you're all skilled and you're all, you know, able to get on each other's nerves just like a family. But you all kind of work towards that one goal of, you know, keeping it all together. So there's this, and just hearing about other corporate cultures and organizations, I've heard everything and I go, I feel like I'm in a great place, you know, or that sounds interesting, I like it here. It's like I wouldn't say that I'm unknowledgeable of other kinds of cultures, but Cyan's is particularly unique, and that we are that close, you know.
The saying that I've said it for years, and I know we've shared it amongst each other company, is that the best thing about Cyan is that it's like a family, and the worst thing about Cyan is that it's like a family.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because you don't want to do things like, especially for you guys who are coming in now and kind of setting up processes and making sure that this project gets off the ground in a good way. And you don't want to hurt feelings, and you want to shake things up without making people feel like what they've been doing up to this point was somehow wrong or less effective. Yeah.
And the layoffs are on.
Yeah, that's no fun.
And they're done that.
Yeah. I mean, it happens everywhere, but how it's done, and I mean, I haven't worked inside Cyan, I kind of work outside looking in, but how it's done is really important. Like, we've heard all the stories of, you know, the boss taking the whole company out to lunch and then standing in the parking lot because the doors are locked and telling them all to go home because they're done forever. But I think, like you guys have said, that's a really important place. Feeling like family can have a really positive effect. Like, we'd keep you if we could, but here's the reality kind of thing. So you feel like you're just being respected, right? And being invited back as soon as they have the means to do so is pretty great. Who else has a question? Okay.
Hello. So recently, Cyan and
company called Limited Run Games announced bringing Real Myst to the Nintendo Switch. And as a Nintendo fan for most of my life, I know that historically it's been notoriously pretty hard to port games to Nintendo platforms. And so I've been thinking, and I'm glad I get the opportunity to ask you, what sort of technical hurdles come with a project like porting a game like Real Myst to Nintendo?
Well, I'll just off the bat say, thankfully, you guys already saw Neil at the last sort of panel that we had, but Neil's helping us out with that at SkyMet Games, so thankfully we can focus on Firmament while that happens. But
He and his team are doing most of the heavy lifting on that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm sure Karl and Jason have tons of fun Real Myst porting stories, so I'll hand this off to Karl.
I have no clue. Actually, we know that there's just hardware limitations, right? So things along those lines, right? Like resource usage, we're talking memory and draw calls and, you know, shader complexity, what have you. But again, SkyMap and Neil, they've been instrumental in getting that done. There's, with respect to the Nintendo Switch, I know there's a lot of UI stuff to consider as well, like how a menu looks. The last one is very like mouse pointer centric, and so this is going to be different. But that's just a result of just how you interact with your Nintendo Switch. But yeah, I know that it hasn't been overnight, so I assume it is very difficult. But at the same time, there's a lot of talented people working on it, and there's also a lot of talented people working on, again, these off-the-shelf engines that even make that possible for someone to look at and go, hey, the barrier to entry on that platform may not be insurmountable. It might be, you know, a few months' work. So, yeah.
It looked and ran pretty good last time I, checked out the build. So
yeah.
Good.
It's gonna be cool.
There's one thing I heard yesterday when I was at Cyan talking to Vicky, who was hoping to be here but isn't today. But so Vicky runs, among other things, she runs QA, and was talking about the fact that people were saying after they backed the 25th anniversary edition of all the games, when are we getting the game, and when can I have it on GOG, and when can I have it on Steam? And there were more than 30 versions of those games that had to be tested and polished and released, not including redoing any that had bugs or issues. Like when you think of 6 games on Steam, on GOG, on PC, on Mac, like all, you think about, and I mean, you have a lot of the team here. Like Cyan has a very small team, and these guys that are testing
the entire engineering team is up here.
Right. So
just as a note.
But think about these guys that are testing, and just to get one of those 30 plus versions out the door. And within weeks, and I mean, I'm community, I'm on your guys' side. I'm always going, hi guys, how's it going? But you guys are all like, when do I get it? When do you have my money? Where's my game? It's like, well, think about the sheer number of games that had to be, brought forward into current technology and then tested for all of those various platforms times 6. So
in a way, I was pretty thankful I missed that period of time. Thank God I didn't have to go through that.
I mean, it was exciting. Everybody was thrilled. The love that Kickstarter got, and obviously you guys are happy with the results, and so are we. But yeah, that was a ton of work that still goes on to this day. So
yeah, I just want to add in going back to some of the more engineering-focused questions in respect to like platforms. So these were older games, and we had to we worked with a few partners on this to make the Myst-25 thing happen, and we would end up working on like Scum VM, and Residual VM and stuff like that, and those teams are amazing, by the way, and like Code Weavers, and so not only were we juggling our own like developmental resources, but like others as well. And so I know for like Vicky and the QA team, like you were saying, that was just like juggling to the max. Like that was insane. But yeah, everything just seemed to come together and work out.
So we shipped a Abduction update yesterday, and Abduction is a single game with now probably about the same number of ways to play the game based on different configurations of the iPads, the index, just all the different. It's fascinating to even look at a test matrix of what it takes to actually take one game and ship it now.
Right.
With motion controllers, no motion controllers, Xbox controller. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So how many of you have more than one? I know a lot of you are collectors. How many of you have more than one copy of Myst on your shelves, like from multiple? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. How many have it on your phone or iPad? Yeah. I mean, think about it. We all had it on Windows 3.1 when it first came out, and we played it. But since then, it's been on how many? How can we count? Like millions, as Brian would say. Like, I have it for like the Jaguar. I have a copy for. I don't have an Atari Jaguar. I've never had an Atari Jaguar, but I have a box that says Myst for Atari Jaguar. Like, all the work that goes into just changing and molding and beating the game into these platforms is unbelievable.
Well, when we did Myst originally, it was only going to be on the Mac.
Yeah.
The first one, and that was it. I think there was like, was it Broderbund? I think decided they ported it over to PC at that time, and then it started to explode into
the rest
everything
is
else.
history. Yeah. And Mac users like to remind us of that a lot, actually. So we're aware.
I'm ambidextrous, huh?
Yeah.
We,
lots of questions.
we have time for, the mic isn't on, Drew.
It's on.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, there we go. We have time for one more question, and you've been waiting a while.
Yeah, quick question. I don't remember when it came out, 2012 or so maybe, that Selenitic first version maze, the walking maze, in UAM Shard and Deep Island, but I played it back in April and again a couple weeks ago. How many people in this room have walked that maze in Uru Deep Island or any other shard?
Oh.
There's a version of that?
I guess.
I guess they didn't know it was there. Somebody took the artwork, that one piece that was published, a fan, and created the fan age of the maze you can walk through, the one from this original Selenitic plan. And it's been in Uru Deep Island now for years. And it's playable. And it's wonderful, and I recommend it.
Can you post that on any of the social media, like if you're Discord, Twitter, Facebook?
Yeah, I want to see that.
I'm not on social media.
So tell
I
us
am a divorced man with a confidential address.
Give me a link and I'll publish it then. That's very cool.
Had to
Awesome.
ask.
Thank you, Stream Chat. Hi, Stream Chat. Okay.
I think we need to wrap it up, Katie.
Okay, cool. Thanks everybody so much. I just want to tell you guys that, like, on behalf of everybody here, that you've heard all the stories of how much we appreciate you as the community, and I know you guys appreciate Cyan, so thank you guys for coming out during your busy days.